I saw her car pull up to the arrivals area just as I was leaving the terminal. Cell phones make airport pickups much easier, especially since 9/11s. I threw my bags in the back seat and got into my sister-in-law's car. Terry, thank you for picking me up from the airport and letting me stay with you until Jerry gets off work. You're welcome, Sandy. I took the day off, and the children are now with my mother. She doesn't see them as often as she would like. I thought that we could spend this day together and chat. Your brother is terribly busy with work right now, and last year, with your move and your difficulties, she hesitated. It took a huge toll on everyone. A day for quiet communication without unnecessary people seemed very tempting. Yes, those first couple of months alone in Portland at a new job. And then one day Jerry showed up at my work. I still can't believe my brother talked Jerry into coming to see me. He could have just taken my things and started a new life. Then I heard Terry laugh quietly. Okay, Terry, spit it out. You know something. Sandy, I thought you would find out about this sooner or later, but your brother tried. What do you mean? They both told me they had met a couple of times, and Jerry said he didn't know where I was until Dave told me. Is there something I don't know about? Sandy, you know your big brother, don't you? I nodded. He is 6 years older than me and has taken care of me since our father died when I was 3 and he was 9. Remember that month when you got a new job and arranged your life? Why do you think Dave would occasionally email you or call you when something was happening on the webcam in your bedroom? I thought he was a bit of a voyeur. Free show, he's a man. Well, everything is a little more complicated here. Dave knew all too well what it was like to be exposed in situations like this. He knew what this meant. Are you saying that you are with him and... Exactly. But in those days, there were no cheap webcams. We weren't married then, but we were supposed to be in an exclusive relationship. We weren't living together yet, but one day my friend saw him in a place where he shouldn't have been, with someone else. The next time he was supposed to be somewhere else outside of working hours, I got there first. He didn't come alone. It was his colleague. When everything became clear, she went to look for something richer, changing partners one after another. I looked at Terry with genuine sympathy. It must not have been easy for you. What have you done with that scoundrel, my brother? She immediately laughed. We separated for 2 months, until one night he drove up to my apartment. Like Jerry, he admitted everything he had done. Dave explained what he did wrong, and why he was wrong, and he sincerely apologized. Honest apology. He didn't make excuses. He still does that when it comes to him. He gives everyone else concessions. Why did you return to him? I know Mr. Stubborn too well. How did you convince him? She smiled. We both started working in Beechwood, 10 minutes from Jerry's apartment. Sometimes we ran into each other by chance at lunch. It was awkward at first, but we started talking again. She told how the death of his grandfather and then his mother changed Dave, how he became more serious, and how one day he invited her to a film, although he hated chicken films. This was a turning point. Terry continued to talk about their journey to trust and love, about how Dave watched the webcam, seeing something familiar in Jerry, about how he wanted to help. When we got to her house, Terry suggested we open a bottle of wine. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in her backyard with a glass of Merlot. Half left quickly. The conversation and the warm breeze continued until I noticed that it seemed like this was already the second or third glass on an empty stomach. Can you bring me something to eat? I don't want to be too drunk when Jerry comes. Why not? When was the last time you were tipsy and he wasn't? This is convenient for him to take advantage of the situation. These words shocked me a little, and I knew it showed on my face. Sandy, don't worry, she laughed. Now I'll bring something, but for now you think about it. She headed toward the kitchen, staggering slightly, holding onto the handrail for stability. Take advantage of me. Why not? And then it dawned on me. Jerry came to Portland 4 times after my surgery. We discussed what went wrong between us. I remember him saying that everything had become too routine. We accepted that this is something we need to work on. We see each other every 3 weeks, but we don't leave time to correct the situation. Basically, our intimate life has remained the same. She was still good, much more active than before, but still the same. At this time, Terry returned with a tray containing crackers and cheese. Terry, I'm sorry, but I have to ask. Did you have the same thing? Has it become routine? Was this part of the problem, or am I just trying to justify something? She nodded. I think it's both. You were both working your way up the career ladder, and the last item on your list was to keep the flame alive in your relationship. You and Jerry need to find a way to make them more interesting. How do you both imagine it? She chuckled slightly, pronouncing the word more interesting. I grabbed a few crackers in a row to soften the effects of the alcohol a little and then thought about it. Maybe we can start today. Maybe I'll surprise him on the way home. He won't even expect it. We sat in the backyard for several hours, talking and sipping wine. Now we drank slowly, maintaining a slight intoxication. Sometimes it's good to let yourself relax. 50-hour work weeks in the tech industry are exhausting. Dave came home at 5:30 and Jerry showed up at 6:15. Dave, seeing that Terry and I were having a great time and not having to drive until 8 o'clock, joined us with a glass of wine. When Jerry appeared, he was confronted by two noisy women and a man who tried unsuccessfully to calm them down. Terry and I had a lot of fun. I stood up, hugged Jerry tightly, we kissed, and I playfully pinched his butt. He was a little confused, but I smiled at him and whispered, "Today we can take a taxi if necessary. Relax, rest, you deserve it, my love. Sandy, how long have you been?" He realized that the question was rhetorical. I wanted to ask what you wanted to do this evening, but I see you've already started with your sister. Is this your second or third bottle? I held up 2.5 fingers with my left hand, and Terry held up 4, and we laughed, comparing our numbers. Jerry shook his head in mock bewilderment. Seeing our condition, he probably decided that it would be better for us to stay at home, so that he would not have to worry about how we would walk if we went to the restaurant as planned. How about I order some Thai takeout for the 4 of us? I know what they deliver. Terry and I nodded, and Dave just sighed with polite resignation. She and Terry rarely allowed themselves a little drink because there was always a lot to do. Work, children, household responsibilities. Jerry sat down, took out his phone, and placed an order. At this time, I served him a glass of wine. I whispered in his ear, "Honestly, I'm not as drunk as you think. I missed you, and we talked about how our lives had become too routine, right?" He nodded, and I continued, "So when we get back to the condo, let's try something new." With these words, I licked his ear, and he shuddered, but with a smile. The secret word is "you can." He literally shook when I said the word secret. We have never discussed anything like this. He looked at me with slight shock, and I nodded. His body relaxed when he realized I was serious. Tonight, I will learn something new about him and about myself. The dinner was pleasant and warm. We discussed a lot, since we had not all met together for a long time. Over dinner, Terry and I exchanged glances periodically. I noticed how she would occasionally tease Dave when she thought no one was looking. I rarely did that with Jerry. I never even thought about it. Does striving for success have to mean you're leaving your partner behind? When Dave and Terry went into the kitchen with plates and a new bottle of wine, I pulled Jerry towards me and kissed him deeply. He had already relaxed a little and responded to my kiss. When the two returned, Dave accidentally dropped his fork, and everyone looked at where it clattered on the floor. At that moment, I felt someone gently squeeze my left breast. I jumped up and stared at Jerry, but he was looking at the sky as if nothing had happened, with an innocent look. Then he looked at me. Who, me? It's good to know that he supports my plan. We continued talking for another half hour, but it was already too late for Dave and Terry. They had to pick up the children. Dave, who had only had 2 glasses of wine the entire evening, was completely sober and ready to go. I looked at Jerry, and he nodded. "It's time for us to return to the condo. Thanks for picking me up, Sandy, and for a wonderful evening." I hugged everyone, and we went home. As Jerry pulled out of the driveway, I said, "Jerry, it's too early to go home right now. Can we stop at the pub in Beechwood? We haven't been there for a long time." I put my hand on his knee and slid my palm along the inside of his thigh. "I guess it can wait a bit, can't it?" You know how to convince. But you're right, it will be nice to go there together for a couple of cocktails. When we entered the pub, I told Jerry to find a seat, and I went to the ladies' room. I fixed my hair and makeup, refreshed my perfume and lipstick, and unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of my blouse. Now I was ready. When I returned, I noticed that he had taken a table with 2 bar stools in the far corner of the room, outside the long bar. The place was quite crowded, but it was a Friday night, so nothing surprising. I pretended to be looking for someone and caught the eye of several men along the way. They even invited me to sit down for a couple of empty chairs. Jerry looked a little worried when he met my gaze, but I paid him little attention. As I got closer, I looked deep into his eyes and let him pull me in. I finally came up and spoke. "Excuse me, is this chair occupied? It's quite crowded, and you don't seem to be waiting for anyone." I made the most flirtatious eyes I could. "My name is Eva, but my friends call me Eve." I extended my hand for a handshake. Confusion appeared on his face until he realized what was happening. Taking my hand carefully, he said, "Sit down, Eve. My name is Adam. Can I offer you a drink?" "Oh, thank you. That would be great. A glass of Merlot or Cabernet, if possible." "I haven't seen you here before. Are you new in town?" "Well, yes and no. I lived here many years ago. I was supposed to meet some friends from college. Many of them warned that they might be late due to deadlines at work. I was half an hour late myself, so perhaps they won't come." "If it's not a secret, what do you do?" "I teach mechanics. At school, in college. This is probably interesting. Quantum mechanics, actually. I teach at MIT's graduate school." "Very impressive. I've always had one question about this." He looked at me and paused. "Where do you find spare parts for quanta?" Then he could hardly contain his laughter. I did not remain in debt. "We buy them online. Recently, there was a promotion on quarks on Amazon, and the divine particle is 2 for the price of 1 if you order before Tuesday." We both burst out laughing. "Adam, it's funny that most people don't know what the divine particle was originally called. She was that damn piece. Who said physicists don't have a sense of humor? Sorry, Eve, I also worked in the technical field, and humor there is either absent or very highly specialized and intellectual. You take joy where you find it. But seriously, how did you get into this field? The competition must be fierce." "I studied mathematics at university, and then one thing led to another." "And you, Adam, what do you do?" He sighed and began to tell. "It's more about what I don't do," he answered with a slight grin. "I was also a mathematician until higher mathematics began to wear me down. As you know, at a certain level you either can't handle it or you just don't want to anymore. I realized that I didn't want to, although I could continue. I got my master's degree and stopped there. It gave me great skills. I worked in financial markets for some time, creating models for buying and selling. I was quite successful for a couple of years until I realized that I didn't want to do this anymore and left. About 6 months later, the first of many crashes happened, and I saw enough to never want to go back. After that, I signed a contract and went to Saudi Arabia to work in logistics for a defense company. I thought it would only be for a couple of months, but it lasted longer. Here he paused, sighed, and continued, "And now I'm a middle manager in a bank. But please don't judge me by this." He coughed and took a sip of his bourbon. "My real passion is art and photography. This is what makes me feel alive." He perked up a little when he brought it up, and I couldn't help but smile. "What makes you feel alive, Eve?" "My work is partly," I answered. "The research is amazing, but like you, it's not my whole life. I also like art, not particularly modern, although it has its place. My favorite pieces are Italian, French, and Flemish art from the period 1450 to 1650. I have been to Europe several times and visited both great and not so great museums. It was fascinating. I once found myself 12 inches from a Caravaggio painting, spent over an hour studying it. It was wonderful. Did you really study his strokes? Isn't this amazing? Textures, its colors, subjects. It's a pity that he died so early, but on the other hand, he was still such a prankster. His religious paintings touched people in a way that the old Renaissance style no longer could. You are an incredibly lucky woman to be able to see his work so closely. This conversation suddenly became something else. Jerry and I had never talked about art before. He knew that we both had a mathematical education, and I also studied physics as an additional specialty. He always stuck to this theme. But knowledge about Caravaggio. Wow. Adam, I've never met anyone who knew more about Caravaggio than that he's just a name from an art history textbook. Well, that's one of the topics I'm familiar with. But most of all, I am fascinated by photography. I have no talent for drawing. How I wish it were. It's a completely different matter with cinema. Ansel Adams and his black and white photographs with carefully adjusted gradations. He thought for a moment, choosing a word. Sorry, I'm bad at explaining. Adam, what are you filming yourself? What are your hobbies? I love photography, but I don't think there's anything special about my work. In winter, I have beautiful sunsets. Sometimes I specifically look for an angle to catch the moon over Lake Erie. Yes, I do stupid things too. But most of all, I'm proud to be able to capture people I know. Sometimes I manage to catch their inner essence, and they themselves do not realize it. These are not staged photographs, not artificial shots, but the real soul of the person in the photo. But to make such a shot, you need to reshoot a lot. Adam, that sounds incredibly beautiful. This is real art. Art that speaks to people. Personally, I think that a lot of modern art is like a Rorschach test. You know, ink blots, two bears dancing on ice, something like that. This is what the viewer himself projects onto the work. Campbell's soup cans are art to some, but that's not my style. And you say that you find something in people and show it in your photographs. This is amazing, simply amazing. Adam and I talked about art for another 20 minutes, until our glasses were almost empty. Adam, this was an incredible conversation. I want you to know that I am not dating anyone right now. I'm curious how things are going for you. If you're with someone, I respect that. So, are you dating anyone now? I put my hand on his and squeezed it lightly, looking into his eyes. Then such a wonderful smile appeared on his face. I'm completely amazed at this. A beautiful, intelligent, and sensitive woman like you. I thought you should fight off men. I understand that this may scare some men away, but for me, it makes you even more fascinating and mysterious. Then he finished his drink. Eva, I'm not dating anyone right now either. He reached out, pushed my glass aside, and then took my other hand. Do you think I could persuade you to look at my photographs? I live nearby. I think you'll like them. It would be great if I could show them to you. You are a real gentleman. I would love to see your work. Lead. After that, he took my sweater and helped me put it on. It promised to be cool at night. He called the waitress over and gave her some bills. She looked at the receipts and thanked him with a sincere smile. He was always generous with his tips. While studying, he worked as a waiter and never forgot where he came from. This is what many people forget when they achieve success. We left the pub, and a few minutes later, we were at his condominium. I haven't been here since Friday when I moved. As I walked up the stairs, I felt old feelings come flooding back, good and not so good. I think Adam noticed that I had slowed down, but he continued talking, asking me about my life, dreams, and plans. When we entered his apartment, I was immediately struck by the changes compared to the time when I lived here with him. He wasn't pretending anymore. There were more than a dozen beautifully designed and framed photographs hanging in the living room, and half of them were of me. He took my sweater while I stood there, amazed by his work. This is simply incredible. These sunsets are amazing. I ran my hand over the frames, looking at each photograph in turn. Then I came across a photo of myself. It showed me standing in a swimsuit on the beach near Lake Erie. Even in a swimsuit, the photo did not look vulgar or provocative. It was graceful. He reflected the inner strength that I sometimes feel in myself. It really showed something of my inner world. I'm even embarrassed to admit it, but I looked majestic, confident, and powerful. He took my hand in his and asked, "Well, do you like this photo?" I, I don't even know what to say. "Your works are great." I fell silent for a minute, shocked by what he was able to see and capture. "You know, your model has a couple of extra pounds that she could lose. Don't you think she's a little out of shape?" "Oh no, Eva, the model is perfect. This is her, the real one, made of flesh and blood. There are women who look like Kate Moss and others who literally harm themselves to look like her. But my model is perfect. See how she radiates health, strength, vulnerability, humanity, love. Yes, love. Those few extra pounds that only you see make her who she is. She is feminine, flirty, and sensual, oh so sensual. This is a real, amazing, and strong woman. It's solid, and I wouldn't change a thing." I went to another photo of myself and saw something else. He came up from behind and put his arm around my shoulders. "Eva, and this one shows a completely different side of her. Do you see how she reaches for the sun? This was my only Tai Chi lesson. Then I felt like a completely awkward teenager and never returned there. Do you see the grace and tension in her body and mind? Such unity of essence." Then he said to himself very quietly, almost in a whisper, "The fool who let her leave." He hugged me tightly and spoke into my ear. "Look at this beauty, this grace, this." He didn't finish, couldn't find the words, but I understood what he meant. His photograph allowed me to see something in myself that I could not see myself. I leaned my elbows on his arms and pressed myself closer to them. We stood in silence for several minutes until he turned me towards him and kissed me. It was the kiss of a new lover, but also an old one. My arms wrapped around him, and I pressed him closer. As we stood there, our hands gradually began to move lower down each other's backs. We started dancing in the same rhythm. Our breathing became heavy. His hand slid down and cupped my buttocks, and I squealed with pleasure. A couple of minutes of such caresses, and I was where he wanted, where I myself wanted to be. Maybe we should make everything more convenient. "Eva, the bedroom is over there. I'm now." "Adam, everything you're going to take can wait," I said, pulling him by the hand into the bedroom. Another surprise awaited me there. The room was decorated with flowers, candles stood ready. On the chest of drawers stood two elegant glasses in the style of the 50s, not modern, thin stemware. There were rose petals on the floor and on the bed. "There's champagne in the refrigerator, but you can wait," he said, hugging me from behind and caressing my breasts. Turning to him, I said, "The only thing I want now is you and passionate sex." "Damn, you turned me on so much, you." And with that, he started kissing me and started unbuttoning my blouse. Our lips were locked while I fiddled with his belt and unbuttoned his pants. We stood there, clinging to each other again. He pulled away and took off his shirt while I took off my blouse. When he took off his pants, shoes, and socks, I unzipped my skirt and took off my tights and shoes. We were barely in our underwear when we pressed ourselves against each other again. As he leaned towards me, I felt the warmth of his touch, both gentle and confident. His hands caressed me, and I couldn't help but moan slightly, feeling his every gesture. We both knew that something had changed between us. It was now much more passionate than before. I ran my fingers through his hair, letting him lead. He had never been so determined before, but this new confidence felt right. I looked at him and felt the warmth spreading through my body, making me forget about everything in the world. "Do you like it?" I asked quietly, feeling emotions overwhelm me. He continued without answering, but his actions spoke louder than any words. I threw my head back, enjoying the moment, and could barely stop myself from asking him to continue again and again. At that moment, I was ready to follow him anywhere, feeling the unity and passion that connected us. "Don't stop, please," I whispered, losing my head from the sensations. He smiled and carefully removed his hand. I tensed slightly until I realized what he was going to do. He laid me on the bed, took off my panties, and spread my legs. His eyes were full of desire. He took off his boxers and leaned towards me, showing his determination to please me. With feeling and tenderness, he touched me until I felt my whole body filled with warmth and a wave of pleasure. When I came to my senses, he was next to me, looking at me with warmth and tenderness. Jerry lay on his side and watched me recover from the intense experience. Now his gaze conveyed understanding and intimacy, which connected us even more tightly. I smiled back at him, feeling how important this moment was for both of us. I leaned over him and began to touch him tenderly, enjoying this closeness. One of the most recent aspects of our relationship that we discovered was the conversations we started having during intimacy. We both liked it, although we were a little shy before. Now, in his bed, I felt this confidence and trust between us, allowing our gazes to meet and convey to each other everything that was in my soul. "Oh, Adam, you always so skillfully make every moment ours special," I whispered, enjoying his warmth. His smile was mysterious, and I felt an exhilarating sense of power wash over me as he leaned towards me. I felt that the situation was in my hands, that I could play this game the way I wanted. His gaze was filled with passion, and his hands gently touched my hair. I felt our deep connection at that moment. I decided to tease him a little by slowly moving my hands while he watched my actions with interest. With every moment, we became closer to each other, and we felt the tension between us growing. It was a game where we both enjoyed roles in which we were both strong and vulnerable. "Adam, what do you want now?" I asked quietly, looking into his eyes. He froze a little, surprised by my question, but a smile appeared on his face. I saw that he trusted me, that at this moment we were both on the same page. My voice was confident and soft, and his response was a forward movement that indicated a willingness to continue this dance of intimacy. He gently moved me onto my back, letting me know that he was now taking the initiative into his own hands. His touch became more confident, and I felt our connection deepen. This moment was full of passion, but without rudeness, only mutual understanding and the desire to make each other happy. I allowed myself to completely lose myself in this feeling, knowing that everything was happening with full dedication and respect for each other. With every movement and every touch, our emotions grew, and with them, so did the intimacy that made this moment special for both of us. We were together, absorbed in each other, enjoying this game full of sincerity, passion, and care. He laughed, and I felt him move slightly, getting my attention. I paused, stepping back for a second to take in his reaction, and caught an expression of contented satisfaction on his face. A moment later, I heard his quiet but confident command, and it seemed to pass through me, leaving me with a slight excitement. I obeyed, feeling emotions awakening inside me, and continued, trying to pay attention to every moment. I made an effort to please him. There was something magical about the way he interacted with me, the way his touch seemed both soft and confident. We were completely immersed in each other, and it seemed as if the whole world around had disappeared, leaving only the two of us. After a few minutes, I felt his hand begin to slide down, exploring my forms, as if trying to catch every detail. His touch was insistent but gentle at the same time, as if he wanted me to give in completely to the moment and allow myself to relax. And so, I really felt myself relaxing, surrendering to his hands, feeling his warmth and confidence. It was as if the world had closed in around us, and nothing was more important than this moment. I couldn't contain my emotions, and this moment completely captured me. I collapsed onto my back, feeling my body go limp from the sensations overwhelming me. It seemed as if all my tension had gone away, leaving only lightness and satisfaction. Adam leaned over me, his gaze focused and deep. He smiled, and there was so much warmth and care in this smile that I felt completely calm. His hands moved gently, and after a couple of moments he lay down next to me, his breathing a little ragged like mine. We both lay next to each other, feeling each other's warmth. I pressed myself against his chest, feeling how he hugged me, and this gesture was full of tenderness. We enjoyed the peace and quiet of this moment, understanding without words how important it was for us. Adam pulled the sheet over us, shielding us from the world, and I felt his hand rest on my shoulder as if protecting me. We lay next to each other, smelling our closeness, scents that mingled, reminding us of what had just happened between us. It was a magical moment in which there was nothing superfluous, only our closeness and a feeling of complete happiness. We slowly closed our eyes, falling into a light slumber, feeling the world around us calm down, leaving us alone in this warm and cozy space. I never felt him get out of bed, but the wonderful man woke me up by caressing my shoulder. "Sandy, my love, would you like something?" I stretched and looked around. It's 1 a.m. and it's 10 p.m. in Portland, but I got up at 3:30 to hit the road. Jerry handed me a glass of champagne. For my price range, it was a very good wine. He took some cheese and offered it to me. I finally woke up and remembered the last hour. "Jerry, did we really do all this? And you haven't even gotten to sex yet?" I asked. Jerry laughed at me and said, "I have no idea what you and Terry talked about this afternoon, but I think things will be different now." Then he leaned over and kissed me. I stood up, took some more champagne, and this time some meat. "I've never felt as free with you as I do today." "Who came up with the idea for the bar? Although, wait, maybe I don't want to know that," I said and laughed. "Jerry, all Terry said is that we need to keep in touch, and that it becomes even more difficult when life becomes busier. I didn't want to go back to the apartment so quickly, and the idea of a bar just came to my mind." "Thank you for your support." I stroked his face and looked into his eyes. "When I came back here and saw these photos of you on the wall, I was stunned. I never knew you were into art. I think we're even. I never knew you were into role-playing games." He smiled, running his hands from my shoulders to my neck. He placed his hand on my chest, his fingers gently sliding along my neck. I directed his hand a little lower, and his eyes immediately lit up, as did my face with a smile. He leaned down to kiss me, enjoying the tenderness of the moment. We had never tried anything like this before, and today's sensations were especially new for both of us. I reached out to touch him and felt him respond to my actions. "You know, it seems to me that today is a good day for new experiments," I said quietly, slightly joking. "How about trying something special?" I looked at him and smiled, continuing to play with his hair and enjoying the moment of intimacy, which was filled with trust and a mutual desire to discover something new together. He began to stroke my head, not excitedly, but gently. I offered him something I know he likes, and he didn't move. I looked up at him. I saw tenderness, love, and tears in his eyes. "What happened, Jerry? What's happening?" He shook his head, holding up a finger for me to wait. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "I never thought you'd be here again after what I did. I couldn't even imagine that this was possible. You forgave me for what I did, but I can't forget it. Sorry, I'm just overwhelmed." I sat up, pulling myself up. "Jerry, the day you came for my procedure, I told you that I can forgive, but I cannot forget. But there is another part to this. As time goes on, what happens becomes less and less important. Look at us. Over these months, we both tried to revive our relationship. We learned to communicate better, balance our careers, and bond even while 2,500 miles apart. We've both changed. I accepted my fault for how our relationship deteriorated. It wasn't all your fault. You also showed me what was going on with Tim. I also contributed. But look at us now." I looked at the two of us lying naked in bed. I couldn't help but laugh. He smiled and then started laughing too. "Look at us. Are these two people who have real problems with each other? Or are they two people who trust each other and build an interesting life together?" Jerry, it was a work in progress for both of us. We have resolved the issues now and will continue to resolve them for the rest of our lives. We know what it's like not to. There are no guarantees, but I think we both understand that we will continue to work. I said I forgave you. Can you forgive yourself? If this balanced, emotionally stable, successful woman can overcome this because she sees who you really are, why wouldn't you do the same? He reached out and hugged me with all his might, and I returned the hug. We held each other for so long that time seemed to stand still. When we opened our arms, I was the first to break the silence. "I have something else to add." "You're just a huge idiot," I said, and we started laughing, hugging each other again. This time, when we parted, he added, "Emotionally stable, Ben and Jerry's in the fridge. I hit him with a pillow, and we rolled around on the bed, laughing. He was above me, looking into my eyes. There was no sadness there, only love and understanding. I sat closer to him and reached out to touch him. We were close, and he became calmer and more relaxed by the second. I gently stroked his face with my other hand, and he kissed me back with a soft, tender kiss. It was not a passionate gesture, but romantic and filled with love. Jerry gently and slowly pressed himself against me, and we shared a special moment of intimacy. There was no rush, just a sense of unity and emotional connection that helped us feel like one. I remember how he smiled at me, and we fell asleep, hugging each other. It was a peaceful sleep for both of us. The next morning, I woke up long before Jerry. She quietly got out of bed and prepared breakfast. We planned a morning run in the Shaker Heights parks, another part of our journey to self-improvement together. Plus, it's a beautiful place for jogging. Freshly brewed coffee is Jerry's morning alarm clock. A light breakfast of fruit and yogurt, and we're ready to go. We don't insist on this. It's a combination of walking and running over a 3-mile distance. We've done this together and separately since our last visit 3 weeks ago. This has helped both my energy levels and the slight weight gain that has stopped completely and may have started to go down. The wine I drank yesterday did not help me lose weight, but it healed my mind and soul. Returning to the apartment, we headed to the kitchen. I'll get some water to rehydrate you. Can you pull out some fruit to snack on, Jerry? I hear aha, and we meet at the table. The first glass of water was drunk very easily. It's so nice to run here, the water parks, the trails in the middle of Shaker Heights. Our water glasses were already empty, so I stood up and grabbed his glass. I'll fill it up, and went to the sink. As I was filling the glasses, I suddenly felt his hand on my arm, and then both arms wrapped around me. I leaned back in his arms, and both of his hands covered my breasts. Oh, Jerry, I take it you're not interested in cold water right now. His hand now slid under my shirt, and I felt the clasp of my bra loosen. He touched my skin softly, and I moaned with pleasure. You said we needed to stay alive. Does this make you feel alive, Sandy? Jerry, maybe we should take a shower and... Why don't I ping you to the tabletop right now? And then we can take a shower. He pulled me tighter and gently ran his hand along my back. Do you remember that you suggested something interesting yesterday? He added with a smile. Here, now, in the kitchen? Don't you think that? Before I could finish, he bent me over the tabletop, gently touching my waist. He leaned down and kissed my neck, making my heart beat faster. Sandy, you know how much I love you, he whispered in my ear as he continued to rub my back. His touch was confident and gentle at the same time. He kissed me and held me close, and I felt that he wanted this moment to be our special one. We can go to the shower later and forget about everything, he added, gently touching my face and looking into my eyes. I knew that he wanted to be near me, to take care of me, and this feeling overwhelmed me. Our emotions were intertwined, and I was ready to share this moment with him, no matter where we were. He stopped, turned me around, and sat me on the tabletop, spreading my legs for himself. His eyes met mine, and he kissed me tenderly, touching my body in a way that made me feel incredible warmth and closeness between us. Every touch was full of care and passion. Oh yes, I love the way you give me these sensations, Jerry. I feel so good when you're around, when you feel me, I whispered, feeling him touch me gently and intensify my sensations. He put one of my legs on his shoulder and then the other, approaching me with special affection. It was at that moment that I felt his confident but soft movements that made my heart beat faster. You prepare me, you do everything as it should be. I closed my eyes and completely trusted him. His touches and gentle movements created waves of pleasure. Everything that happened was filled with mutual trust and love. His touches became more and more gentle and deep at the same time, and I felt how our connection was strengthening. His hands moved confidently, and I enjoyed every moment of this intimacy, forgetting about everything around. I sighed and pulled him closer, feeling our shared emotions and desire to be close. I couldn't wait to answer him in the same way, investing all my tenderness and passion. You do everything so wonderful, I whispered, feeling him pull away and look into my eyes, wanting to understand what I was feeling. We were in this together as partners, as people who love each other and want to give each other moments of happiness. His touches became more and more confident, and I felt our connection move to a new level. We exchanged glances, words, emotions, and this made us even closer. Do you like it when I'm around? He asked, looking into my eyes. Yes, don't stop, I said, smiling. I want this moment to last as long as possible. You make me feel special, and I want to be with you. He touched me, his hands and words brought me peace and joy. We were in this together not just to satisfy our desires, but to strengthen our love, our intimacy, and our unity. I was going to see him while he was touching me tenderly. It was something new for us, and I really liked it. His touch worked magic, and I put my hands behind my back to keep from slipping. Crash. We dropped the toaster on the floor, and the glass door broke. The fragments scattered everywhere. Jerry looked at me in shock, and I must have looked the same. Then we both started laughing, long and heartily. This is truly a way to ruin the moment. Okay, Jerry, you grab the broom, and I'll grab the vacuum cleaner, and I started, but he just tossed his gym shorts aside and picked me up in his arms. Backing away, he carried me out of the kitchen. What about cleaning? Glass, toaster. I said I was going to spend this moment with you right now. Everything else can wait. Nothing else matters. He sat me down on the sofa and smiled. He took off the rest of our clothes and leaned over and kissed me. This moment was full of love and trust, and that is what made it so special. Where are we staying? I giggled. Jerry smiled and pulled me closer to him again. We decided that sometimes it's important to live in the moment and enjoy the moment, even if everyday things can wait. I love being with you, watching your eyes when you are so close to me. At this point, I nodded, pushing him slightly. He began to move carefully and slowly, listening to my sensations. Do it gently, Jerry. Take your time until I ask you to, and then you can be more decisive. Just give me a little time to get used to it, I whispered, enjoying every moment. Perhaps I will, he replied, because I love when everything happens slowly and we can feel every second together. His fingers found my hand, and I felt warmth and closeness between us. I would never have thought how great it would be to feel your presence so close, I said, slightly choking with pleasure. You give me incredible emotions, and I feel like I'm about to reach the peak. He just smiled, continuing to give me this feeling. He was there, caring and attentive, and I felt how we were both gradually approaching that same line. Do you want to continue like this or do something new? I asked, looking at him, and he nodded softly, continuing to touch me with the same tenderness and caution. We will continue as we always dreamed, he replied. I want to give you the best I can. I felt his confidence and knew we were both in this together. We arrived at the casino on Friday at 8 p.m., a full 2 hours later than planned. It took us a while to get out of Portland and get there. Traffic jams on weekend roads, leaving work, accidents on the highway. Jerry and I had urgent problems at work that needed to be addressed before we could leave. Everything was against us, but in the end we did it. It's Jerry's birthday this weekend. We've been living together again for about 11 months now, and we both needed a break from work and something fun for each other. Today is his birthday, and it's my turn to give him a gift. He wanted me to play the role of a prostitute in a casino. I will be happy to give him this gift. After checking into our room, we opened a bottle of wine to celebrate our departure from the city and our free time. Taking this time to rest is good. We both took a glass and savored it slowly, a planned rejection of the shoulds of life. Rushing to relax doesn't make much sense, does it? Jerry took a shower to get ready for the evening. We planned to have dinner, watch a show, and hang out for fun at the gaming tables. I will accompany him like candy. He will be a high roller with me as a hot girl for his body of easy virtue, bought and paid for next to him. We are not gamblers, but it will be interesting to watch others bet with real money. We're computer geeks, two math geeks calculating the odds and then making imaginary bets on each other on what will happen next. We're having fun with other people's money. My subsequent observations in the hotel room kept me enthralled all week. My idea, my task, his surprise. It will be hard. I wonder if he will be able to walk normally by Sunday morning. Will I be able to walk normally by Sunday morning? Jerry showered first and then sat down, nervously waiting for me. Jerry, why don't you come down and I'll meet you somewhere downstairs? I will keep searching until I find you. In 30 minutes, be at the bar, near the dealer's tables. I want to take a shower and get ready. I'm so looking forward to the next glass, so I'll wait for you. You're coming? He kissed me, patted me on my left thigh, and left. This gave me time to put on a costume for his birthday, the image of a prostitute to pick up him. From the very first time we did a role play in a Beechwood pub, pretending to be Adam and Eve, it became our hobby. Today, in honor of his birthday, we agreed that I will play the role of a semi-elite girl of easy virtue. I also have a little gift for him when he returns. Since I had no idea what easy girls looked like, I did some research. The internet is a great place to highlight the information you need. I found that these women who work in small casinos usually range from 20 to 60 years old. It also caters to an older audience. As for girls of about 25, they wear short skirts with a deep neckline, but do not look too vulgar. What matters most is how they approach potential clients. I dressed to sweep Jerry off his feet, a short skirt and my dark purple 4-inch heels. I don't understand why men don't go crazy for shoes, especially ones like these. These shoes are simply a work of art, and they make my hips sway smoothly. They matched my lipstick and eyeliner perfectly. After the shower, I applied a little perfume to my décolleté, and I was ready to hook up with Jerry. In the elevator, I noticed the direct glances of some men, those who were without girlfriends or wives nearby. Those who were with someone cast only short sidelong glances. Women, apparently, did not like my appearance, so I apparently looked quite provocative. From the main lobby, I walked past the slot machines, as that was the way to the bar. I walked slowly, looking around at people. In the image of an easily accessible girl, I had to play a role, assessing men and their companions. From time to time, I caught the direct gaze of men, and twice even women, with a smile. I would never have thought that this place was so suitable for hunting. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Finally, I saw Jerry sitting at the bar. He was probably drinking his favorite Knob Creek and watching the tables nearby. The dealers were animated and did their best to keep the excitement going. I quietly walked towards him until he finally noticed me. "Is this seat taken? It seems you have no company today, honey." I touched his hand, maintaining confident eye contact. He pulled out a chair and motioned for me to sit down. I carefully squeezed between him and the empty chair, deliberately touching his hand and body. I sat down to show off my legs and give him a glimpse of my cleavage, leaning forward slightly. "Oh, what a beautiful woman you are. Stunning dress. The design is simply amazing. You can see that it was made to order. It fits perfectly." "Oh, this is an old dress," I flirted, shaking my breasts in his direction and getting the desired reaction. "It's a little difficult to put on." I paused. "But it can be removed very easily." I watched his reaction. I saw how the tent in his pants began to inflate. "Would you like to buy the lady a drink? This way we can get to know each other better." Turning to the bartender, Jerry said, "Don't treat this lady," and looked at me. "Sorry, I forgot to ask, what do you prefer? You look like a vodka lime drinker." "Did you guess right?" "Almost got it right, but I prefer gin and lime." "Bartender, a gin gimlet for miss." He looks at me. "Oh, sorry, I'm Roxy. What about you?" "John. Do you often visit this casino? It's quite lively here. I come in from time to time. I don't remember seeing you here before." "Just passing through, heading to Los Angeles, to the fashion district. We need to discuss something with the designers. I'm a buyer for. Well, that's a secret. Let's just say our projects are related to Christmas and Thanksgiving parades. So you travel often? Doesn't it get lonely?" With these words, I put my hand on his right knee and began to run my fingers along the inside of his thigh. He fidgeted slightly, and I enjoyed the moment. He was pleased too. Well, it can get lonely on the road. Looks like you could use some company for the evening. You are a very seductive woman. And you are a very nice man. I deliberately looked down. It looks like you have something impressive there. I moved my hand to his groin. But unfortunately, I don't come cheap. I can solve your problem, and it won't cost much. Plus, I do a lot more than just vanilla stuff, honey. Now I was teasing him. What do you say? I leaned over and kissed him. How much for the evening, Roxy? It will cost $300 for an hour, but we can work it out if you want to extend my company. Suddenly, I felt a rough hand on my shoulder. We want you two to come with us immediately. Standing in front of us are two hefty men in suits with casino employee badges. The second of them twisted Jerry's right arm behind his back in a painful position. Jerry was speechless. We're both shocked. Jerry tries to remain calm, but he doesn't do it well. Wait, I can explain. We live together, we just play. It's not what you think. I can prove it. Yeah, buddy, I heard that before, the first guard replies, looking at his ring finger and not seeing a ring or even a trace of it there. Does your girlfriend know that you hang out with girls of easy virtue? No, yes, this is my girlfriend, I'm not married. That is, we are not married. That is, none of us are married. Jerry is clearly scared, and I start to shake. Looking around, I see that we are surrounded by spectators. Never in my life have I felt so vulnerable. I know we can explain ourselves, but... Jerry spoke again. Look in the top pocket of my jacket. Our checkbook is there. It contains our names and one address. He pauses. I think our driver's license is in there too. Suddenly, his face changes to a frightened one. Oh no, they stayed in the hotel room. The first guard looked at me. I guess she didn't have room to take anything else. I felt my cheeks flush. The first guard looked at the second, who nodded slightly. The second guard, without releasing his grip, reached into Jerry's pocket and pulled out a checkbook. Opening it, he looked at me. Quick, spell the names and address. The first name is Zygmunt Jersey. I'll say the last name slowly. Prsish. He interrupted me. I could name all 13 letters. What's your middle name? This is mine. Sandra Graciani. Okay, lady. Give the city, apartment number, and postal code. Portland, Oregon, apartment 23C, zip code. By this point, Jerry's hand had been released. He moved it slowly, apparently. It was painful. The first guard interrupts me. If he paid her by checks, she could remember this information. This doesn't prove anything. Send them to the station. Jerry excitedly starts talking again. Wait, I have one more proof that we are together. He turns to the first guard, who nods for him to continue. Jerry fidgets, trying to get something out of his jacket pocket. He's worried, I can hear it in his voice. It's here, it's definitely here. He is shaking with tension. Jerry searches one pocket, then another, then a third, becoming increasingly desperate. The first guard shakes his head. Time's up. Send them. I start to tremble. Suddenly, Jerry turns to me and gets down on one knee. He looks at me with the calmest expression on his face. Slowly open the small box with the ring. Sandy, will you marry me? Will you become my wife? This cunning man set a trap for me. This beautiful, dear cunning man proposed to me in front of everyone. Shock is probably written all over my face. But Jerry is now absolutely calm. He smiles from ear to ear. I'm so happy, and we will not be arrested. The guards smile too. The crowd around us fell silent and moved closer. Jerry is on his knee with a platinum ring studded with sparkling stones. Even if it was a ring from a packet of crackers, it would be just as wonderful. I need to get even. I make an angry face and say with indignation in my voice, "You bastard." There's a pause for effect, and I see a flicker of concern cross his face. I won't take your last name. He looks puzzled. Yes, I will marry you, but... The crowd burst into applause as Jerry stood up and we kissed and hugged for what felt like hours. The guards patted Jerry on the back, gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek, wished us all the best, and left. The bartender poured champagne for everyone present, and the waiter served it. I looked around and noticed familiar faces from our workplaces, including Tim and his wife, Mary Jane. We celebrated, and my colleagues admired the engagement ring. We laughed, joked, and discussed how Jerry had arranged it all. I still couldn't believe that he had somehow managed to invite all these people. It was a Friday night, a 45-minute drive to the casino, and many of them would probably be staying overnight. Jerry and I have been living together for almost a year now. I moved here a year and a half ago, and he joined 11 months ago. Before that, he came every 3 weeks. It was a difficult but amazing year for us. I liked the ring. Jerry has great taste, and I realized that this was not a mass-produced piece of jewelry, but something special, made to order. My office friends kept asking to see the ring, and then nudged their husbands or boyfriends with the hint, "You could do something like that too." Someone even made a joke about the Jared ad. The man tried to find out from Jerry where he got it, but he only answered, "An artist from Cleveland." We spent 2 hours chatting with friends. I would be next to Jerry, then I would move away to talk to someone, but then I would return to him again. At one point, I whispered to him, "I hope you don't mind if I don't pretend to be a call girl in public. This is more for our private games, right?" He smiled and quietly replied, "I just needed us to look guilty so that the casino security would be interested. Don't worry, no role-playing. This evening is for us and our friends. We'll discuss everything later." I giggled. "By the way, Jerry, I have a little gift for you in your room. Your birthday is not limited to role-playing games." He smiled, kissed me, and gently patted my thigh, adding a light slap. After a while, I apologized to my friends and headed to the ladies' room. As I rounded the corner, I noticed Tim's wife, Mary Jane, had followed me. When I went into the stall and finished my business, she was waiting for me at the sink. Her face expressed tension, but not anger. She was the first to speak. "Can I talk to you alone? I didn't want to set up an ambush, but this is the only place I can approach." We were alone, so I nodded. "You've been Tim's friend for the last 18 months. To be honest, he and I have been having problems in our marriage for a long time." She looked away and then looked back at me. "Are you comfortable talking to me about this?" I nodded again, this time placing my hand on top of hers. I understood what she was going to say and wanted to let her know that she could speak openly. "Like I said, we had problems, and when you showed up, he became even more distant. I thought you made our situation worse, but about a year ago, something changed. All this time, I insisted on family therapy, and for the first time, he agreed. He never told me many of the details of your relationship, whether he cheated or not." I shook my head in denial, but she raised her hand to stop me. However, a look of relief appeared on her face, and she continued, "What I understand is that he was emotionally intimate with you, and then something changed about a year ago. No matter what happened, he decided to become emotionally invested in our marriage again. Mary Jane, a couple of months ago, I noticed that photographs of you and your children appeared on his desk. I never told him this directly, but it made me really happy. You're right, he wasn't involved in your marriage before." One day after work, I was going to introduce Tom and Jerry. Jerry flew in from Cleveland that Friday. When Tim found out that Jerry would arrive in a few minutes, he lost his temper and ran away. Jerry watched us as we sat and talked for about 15 minutes before time left. Jerry told me what was happening. I was slowly being seduced. The same thing happened to Jerry, but he ultimately chose infidelity. It took him to cross half the country, be honest with me, and do a lot more to restore trust. When I realized the position Tim was putting me in, Jerry suggested ways to change the dynamics of our relationship. Remember, I still had to work with him. We both wanted to keep our jobs. Tim is still my friend, but now only at arm's length. No personal meetings after work. But I quietly redirected his attention back to you and the children, no longer to myself. I know what it's like to be abandoned. I couldn't do this to anyone else. I'm no longer emotionally close to him, but I've heard about some of his problems. All I can say is that I let him talk and direct him back to you. I hope this doesn't scare you. When your photos appeared on his desk, I felt that you were both on the right path. At that moment, someone else entered the bathroom, and I immediately switched to talking about the ring and pendants that Jerry gave me. When she left, I continued, "Did this help you? Have I crossed the line? What do you think? Please tell me. I was honest with you. I hope that." Thank you for your honesty. In our sessions with the counselor, Jerry told me about these things, and what you said matches what he said. For me, this is a relief on two levels. Firstly, his honesty after years of estrangement, and secondly, your honesty. A year ago, I hated you. Today, you are beautiful. With these words, she hugged me, and I hugged her back. We talked for a couple more minutes, and then joined the others. I gave her my number in case she ever needed to call, and she gave me hers. By 11 in the evening, half of the guests had left, and by midnight another part had left. The groups would come together and then disperse to do their own thing or spend time only with a partner. There was dinner, someone was gambling, and someone was watching a show. I spent half the evening holding Jerry's hand, looking at the ring, looking at him. He certainly continues to keep things interesting. As we waited for the show to start, I had time to take a closer look at the ring. This is definitely the work of the same craftsman who made my pendants. He lived in Cleveland. Jerry hasn't lived there for several months. When did he buy it? Is this why he borrowed my mother's ring from me many months ago? To find out the size? Because he knew it was right for me? After midnight, I pulled Jerry aside and asked if we could leave for the night. There was so much going on, and it was a long week. He hugged me tightly, and we headed to the elevators. The elevator doors were closing when Tim and his wife, Mary Jane, entered. They looked tired, too. During the evening, we spent a little time with this couple. Mary Jane greeted us and asked if the surprise was a complete surprise. Yes and no at the same time. We've been back together for over a year now, and we've had a lot to overcome. I'm glad he chased me, and we gave each other another chance. It was hard, but it was worth it. Now I know we are stronger than before. Mary Jane smiled and said, "I know what you mean when you say it was hard. Being married is real work." She held Tim's hand, and his other arm wrapped around her waist. This was not a showy hug. I only noticed this because of the mirrors in the elevator. It was an embrace of intimacy. It's great that Jerry invited us all here. We persuaded my sister to babysit the children, and we had a day off. Tomorrow, we are going to the coast to an all-inclusive boutique hotel. The chef there has received excellent reviews, and the room has a private terrace and jacuzzi overlooking the ocean. We haven't gone out without the kids for years. The elevator stopped, and they wished us good luck and good night. As the doors closed, Jerry whistled softly. "What, are you going to be a married man and whistle at a married woman?" He looked at me and laughed. You didn't see. In the mirror, I noticed how he grabbed her butt as he left. She immediately turned around and began to unzip his fly. When the door was half closed, I saw her hand massaging his pants right in the hallway while they kissed passionately, and both of his hands did not leave her butt unattended. Well, that really deserves a whistle for the two of them, and you deserve a kiss and a hug for what you did for them. He hugged me and said, "Wait a minute. I was just protecting my assets," and at that moment he grabbed my buttocks tightly. "Yes, it is," I said, kissing him as the elevator stopped and the doors opened. "And you told me how to do it without hurting anyone else. He's still a friend, but now a friend from a distance. And you are my faithful fiancé and will soon be a faithful husband," I added. "Says his faithful bride and soon-to-be faithful wife," he replied with a wink. As we exited the elevator, Jerry suddenly pinched my butt. I jumped and screamed slightly as I noticed someone walking down the hallway in the opposite direction without turning around. In a split second, I decided to turn everything into a joke and began to unzip his fly, managing to insert my hand halfway while he simultaneously tried to grab my left buttock and lift my skirt. I, laughing, broke away from his hands and ran to our room. Alas, I forgot that he had the key card. He approached me quietly, opened the door, and let me go forward. Then he pushed me inside with a light slap on the ass. And then, already laughing with me, he pinched me painfully in the same place. We went in and closed the door. He was about to attack again, but something on the table caught his attention. There was a wrapped gift for him, along with 2 glasses and a box of chocolate. While he stood with his mouth open, I went to the refrigerator and took out a bottle of champagne expensive for $50. For us, it was luxury and meant a special occasion. Jerry was a little dumbfounded and slowly walked up to the table. I handed him the bottle, wrapped in a towel. He looked at me, then at the bottle and towel. Well, we have good champagne, but are we just going to look at it? With a pleasant smile, he began to remove the wire from the cork. He then covered the top with a towel and gently rocked and twisted the plug until there was a soft pop. I held 2 glasses while he poured the drink. I raised my glass and said, "And now for us, and for the wonderful surprise that you gave me today. We earned everything ourselves, we put in our best, and we will have a wonderful life together." We taped our glasses lightly and took a sip. Jerry then said, "To my wonderful bride, the one who kicked me out and then let me in again. We are better than we were, and it will only get better." We clinked glasses again and drank a little more, after which he kissed me. It was the first time we were alone since Jerry proposed to me. He put my glass down and hugged me tightly. Our bodies pressed against each other. We swayed slightly. The movements became more and more sensual. Then I pulled away and picked up his gift. "I have a little birthday present for you. You can use it, or I can, or we both can. Guess what it is?" I gave him the most sly smile I could muster. "Consider this a little revenge for tonight. You gave me the surprise of my life. Now it's your turn." He took the box from my hands and looked at me carefully. I took another sip and stood back while he shook the box. It did rattle slightly, and he had no idea what that sound was. "So, are you saying I can use it, or you, or both of us? Are the possibilities endless? Any more tips, Sandy? You mentioned it once, and I haven't heard about it since." "Okay, I mentioned it once. Is there another clue?" "Well, this could be part of our evening fun." He began to unwrap the box and said, "So, as I understand it, everything can still become a part. Then this sounds more and more interesting, Sandy. Or Roxy," he said with a devilish smile, straightening the wrapping paper that had fallen to the floor. "I think it's better to have Sandy today. I wouldn't trust Roxy. Well, Jerry, what do you see?" The lid of the box fell to the floor, and he looked inside. Shock and confusion showed on his face. He pulled out a set of 4 cloth belts and a blindfold from the box. It was fun. The look on his face was priceless. He stared at the belts, then looked into my eyes. He had no words, but I saw thoughts flashing through his head. Because of one random phrase, I realized that he wanted to try something similar, but was too embarrassed to say it again. He began. "Yes, is there something you want to say, Jerry?" He looked at me with an expression that mixed lust and fear. More fear than anything else. His eyes darted between the handcuffs and me, again and again. "So, Jerry, do you like your birthday present?" "Sandy, you just stunned me. I didn't even expect it. Now the main question is, who will use it first?" Him. The look on his face was priceless. He didn't have the slightest idea, and I thought he had an idea, but he just didn't want to be the first. After waiting a couple of seconds, enjoying the confusion on his face, I moved closer. I took the handcuffs from his hands. "Jerry, since today is your birthday, I think you should go first." He still did not understand who exactly to be first, the binder or the bound. Then I leaned towards his ear and whispered, "Remember, your safe word is Yukon. We came up with it a few months ago. I hope you don't need it." And at that moment, he realized who would be the first to be tied up. "What? I... Looking at him with puppy dog eyes, I said, "Jerry, it's your birthday. Do you really think I'm going to do something you don't like, Hn?" With genuine concern in his eyes, he quickly said, "How about without the blindfold? We have our whole lives ahead of us. We don't have to try everything in one day, okay?" He was clearly tense. I nodded and threw the bandage on the wall. He looked a little more relaxed, but just a little. I started unbuttoning his shirt. He still couldn't believe what was happening when I began to unbuckle his belt. "Don't worry, Jerry. I know you'll love it. I spent a whole week dreaming about what I would do with you. So relax and take another sip of champagne." He began to calm down a little. My hands slid over his chest. I took off his shirt, then his t-shirt. He continued to come to his senses until I pulled his head to my lips for a sensual kiss, pressing my whole body against him. Relief and anxiety were mixed in his eyes. I unfastened his belt and was now undoing the zipper. Kneeling down in front of him, I placed kisses along his chest and stomach on the way down. I unbuttoned his pants and pulled them down his legs, leaving him in just his boxers. I took off his shoes and socks, one at a time, gently touching his feet. Slowly, very slowly. The slower I moved, the more excited he became. Finally, he was left in only his boxers, and I knelt at his feet. Suddenly, I pushed him onto the bed. A small woman, 5 feet 2 inches tall, knocks over a man 6 feet tall. He collapsed with a loud bang. It was easy. It'll be fun. I quickly reached for the handcuffs. His worried look returned. I leaned over and kissed him on the lips. "Jerry, remember, next time these handcuffs will be on me. Do you still need to worry?" He smiled at me, and some of the tension left his face. I didn't expect it to be so hard for him. He probably assumed the worst, so I had to make it unforgettably enjoyable. These handcuffs are intended to tease and pleasure, not to punish or humiliate. Does this help? He nodded. It would be better if he himself did not use them for another purpose, otherwise our engagement will be very short. I gently stroked his left hand and raised it above his head towards the head of the bed. I studied in advance how I would tie him to the bed. Not all hotels have the ability to attach something, but here it was possible. I smiled at him, looking down at him, and secured one cuff on his wrist, then the other on his other wrist. By this time, Jerry was almost sweating with excitement. I moved lower and fastened both his ankles. He still had his boxers on, and I had my own plans for them. Walking around the bed, I quickly secured the 4 ends of the handcuffs to the bed frame. Now he is my prisoner. So, what does it feel like to be my toy, bound and nowhere to go? I moved away from the bed and began a slow dance with an emphasis on teasing for Jerry. I turned my back to him and, looking over my shoulder, slowly reached for the zipper on my dress. I lowered her inch by inch, smoothly swaying my hips to imaginary sensual music. My ass moved right in front of his face. Then I turned to face him, meeting his gaze, and let one strap of my dress fall off my shoulder, then the other. He seemed to have completely forgotten that he was tied up, so much was he expecting what would happen next. I saw hunger in his eyes. "Do you like what you see?" I asked, swaying from side to side in front of him. The top of the dress slid down, revealing my low-cut black lace bra and panties. I love black lingerie, and Jerry has learned to love it too. He knows what it does to me, and then what I do to it. His eyes were glued to my body as I slowly slid out of my dress. It fell to the floor, as if deliberately delaying the moment. "Do you like what you see, my little toy?" I asked languidly. He nodded in recognition. Jerry has always been a breast lover. And Pop, why, he always loved my body, despite my own doubts. I leaned closer, feeling his gaze fixed on me. I always liked the way he reacts to my movements. At that moment I thought, shouldn't I do something special for him, bring something new into our game? We both love moments like this. I lifted my hands to my bra and lifted my breasts slightly, smiling as he stared at me. I exhaled quietly, enjoying the process and the sight of my beloved, full of anticipation. "You're enjoying the show, right?" I purred, looking into his eyes. He answered only with a glance, without looking away from me. I stood in front of him in panties, a lace bra, and stockings. I knew it would make an impression. I hadn't worn one specifically for him before. but he had glanced at similar photos more than once. I felt like a heroine from a movie embodying his fantasies. Turning my back to him, I slowly took off my bra, swaying my hips slightly. Then, turning around again, I tossed the bra to him with a smile. Jerry sighed quietly. I grabbed my chest with my hands and lifted it slightly. "Do you like this?" I asked, watching his reaction. When I leaned closer, my breasts barely touched his lips. His hot breath felt on my skin, and I knew he liked it. I moved even closer, leaning on one of his bound hands. His fingers lightly slid along the edge of my underwear, and I quietly moaned with pleasure. "Oh, Jerry," I whispered, feeling the moment become more and more special. My gaze lowered, and I saw how my beloved, full of desire, tried to please me, and this feeling warmed me from the inside. "Oh, yes, yes." I moaned quietly, feeling a wave of pleasure cover me and feel exhausted onto his chest to rest a little. I needed to catch my breath. When I finally felt better, my gaze moved down to his boxers. I noticed how his tension increased. His eyes glowed with impatience, and his breathing became more and more rapid. Now it was his turn. "Well, dear." I gently ran my finger across his forehead, touching his lips. "I hope you can wait a little." His eyes widened when my finger touched his lips, and I saw him take a restrained breath. I smiled, watching his reaction. "That's it, my love," I whispered, touching his chest. I knew how much he liked these moments, full of tenderness and warmth. Then, slowly, I began to gently touch his shoulders and chest so that he could feel my care and attention. This was something new for both of us, and I was surprised to notice how much he liked these soft touches. I leaned down to gently kiss his chest and heard him purr softly in pleasure. "So you like it when I give you attention, love?" There was no longer an ounce of embarrassment on his face. It was replaced by passion and anticipation. I loved seeing him so happy. I smiled and decided to add a little playfulness to the moment. "Relax, Jerry. You look absolutely incredible, and I want you to feel how much I appreciate it." His face expressed slight bewilderment, but now there was no indignation in it, only anticipation of what would happen next. "I promise you'll like it, Jerry," I whispered, smiling. I carefully cut his boxers, freeing him of the remaining clothes. As I began to pull the fabric away, he lifted his hips to help. Then I went to my bag and took out a set of new, stylish clothes that should highlight his attractiveness. "Won't you be scared if I expose you like this?" he asked with a smile. I leaned over and kissed him on the lips. "It's okay when I'm next to you," I said tenderly. I began to cover his chest with kisses, enjoying the moment of closeness and warmth. He laughed as he watched me. "If I ever make a mistake and lose you, you deserve me to make it right," he said, his face showing genuine affection. I smiled, brushing his hair out of his face. "Jerry, going to Tim helped us learn to talk about our problems. I think loyalty will no longer be an obstacle for us," I answered, pausing, and then added, "I think we can cope with any difficulties together." He looked at me gratefully, and I felt both of us growing in confidence in each other. "And by the way, Sandy," he added, "you know that this rule applies to you too." I raised my eyebrows and smiled, looking into his eyes. "Of course, dear, this is a mutual agreement," I answered, feeling the warmth of his gaze. We enjoyed this moment of intimacy until I decided to move on to the next step. I rose above him and sat on my knees, his eyes looking straight at me. "I think it's time," I whispered with a smile. "Do you want me to take the first step, or will you leave it to me?" "Come on, my brave one," he answered with a slight grin. I gently sat on his lap, and we began to move in the same rhythm, feeling unity and closeness with each other. We both enjoyed the moment until we reached the limit, and he hugged me, expressing his satisfaction and happiness. A mixture of relief and joy was visible on his face, the expression of a man who is ready to be there, despite any difficulties. The face of the man who will soon become my husband. I took off the handcuffs, and we covered ourselves with a blanket, huddling closely together. The next day, it was his turn to command the parade. I have to admit, after everything, I could barely walk. Jerry and I decided to get married, and then have children, strictly in that order. We also agreed that we would move into the house before our first child was born. I've had enough chaos in my life without having to repeat it again. I prefer to worry about the baby's first steps rather than worrying about the turmoil in life. When children appear, our income will inevitably decrease, but this did not frighten us. We have learned to focus on the most important things. For both of us, the most important thing was each other. Jerry, due to his reputation in auditing, was on the lists of several recruiters. He has already turned down a couple of offers due to the frequent travel required. Even at his current company, he turned down positions that required him to be away from home for 2 weeks or more. I learned that in the future I will be able to work from home if I want. Sometimes it would be necessary to travel to sites, but with the development of big data operations, the need for travel became less and less. I was left to advise rather than participate in installations. Jerry found a stable place where he felt comfortable. The last year has been the best of our lives. There were shouting and quarrels, but there were also conversations and compromises. We began to understand what it means to have a real relationship, built on working on each other and ourselves. Marriage cannot fix what is broken, but it can help those who are willing to heal their partner and themselves. It's been a year since Jerry and I started living together again. This happened about 5 months after the biopsy. We continued to get closer and closer. His past adventures with Diana were now much less important. I think him coming to Portland before the biopsy showed me who he really is. We've worked a lot on our relationship since then. I still had to insist on moving here, but he wanted to get a position first. As soon as he was given an offer, he accepted and began shipping his items the same day. He had put his apartment on the market a few months earlier, but the market wasn't doing well. My brother offered to put him in one of his spare bedrooms if the apartment was sold. She was eventually removed by a doctor from the Cleveland clinic who was looking for temporary housing for himself and his small family. In some ways, it felt like Jerry and I got divorced and then got married again. Although we only lived together, it was like a second chance. We still have difficult moments when it feels like each of us has just one nerve cell left standing, but we are much better at supporting each other. We talk more, even if sometimes a day after an argument, but we do it. I never knew before how stubborn he could be, and then I realized that it was difficult for me to give in too. I read that a good marriage is like looking in the mirror 24/7. It's not for everyone. I wanted us to tell my brother and his family personally. They played a huge role in getting us back together. Their support changed everything. After learning that they would be home the weekend their oldest child was in a school play, Jerry and I bought plane tickets without telling them. Our unexpected arrival at the school play shocked them. After the show, when we were all talking, Jerry said he was hungry. I suggested going to a good restaurant. Dave was surprised. And the children too? I was about to answer, but Jerry interrupted me. We came to town. We know it's a little expensive, but we both got promotions and should celebrate. We'll treat you. No objection. Even if we had dinner at McDonald's with Happy Meals for everyone, it would have been a great holiday for Jerry and me. Family is so important to us all, and Jerry was welcomed back with open arms. We celebrate the joy of being together. Ordering appetizers took longer than necessary. Our waitress Jill was very patient. We laughed and joked with her a lot until we decided. She left to take the order. I left the choice of wine up to Dave and Jerry. For me, almost all wine is good and sometimes even great. Restaurants don't usually have bad wine, and after visiting Oregon's wine regions, I began to appreciate wine much more. While Dave and Jerry were discussing wine options, the waitress brought out a bottle. It was not expensive, but quite decent. Dave was the first to speak. "Sorry, but we didn't order this. This wine is a gift from another table. They said it was to show their appreciation for what you did." We were all confused. We looked around the hall, but did not see anyone we knew or anyone looking in our direction. I asked the waitress to point out the person who gave the gift. She refused, but Jerry took out a 20 and asked him to tell the man to come to our table if possible. After this, we continued to discuss the choice of dishes. Dave and Jerry began discussing different types of pasta. Both are a little passionate about cooking to a certain extent. A young man we had never seen before approached our table. My fiancée and I are celebrating our engagement today. She saw you at the table and wanted to thank you for what you did for her. I would also like to thank you. I hope you enjoy this wine. Then he tried to leave. Jerry quickly said, "Excuse me, could you tell me your name and your fiancé's name? Sorry, but I don't recognize you at all." "My name is Kevin Handstrong. You don't know me. I only heard about you from my fiancée. She didn't want to bother you. She was embarrassed." He looked a little embarrassed, but continued. "What you did for her was during the most difficult period of her life. After all her mistakes, you extended an olive branch to her and gave her a chance to save herself. I knew her at the time. I saw what she was like. I saw what kind of person was hiding inside her. I watched her climb out of the hole she had driven herself into." I was completely confused by his words and looked to Jerry for guidance. He, on the contrary, did not look at all confused. Then Jerry took my hand and said, "Let's go meet her. Kevin, lead us." We walked across the hall. I looked around at the other visitors. No one I know. Nobody looked in our direction. We turned the corner. A woman was sitting at the table in profile. It was Diana. Now I understand everything. Jerry was the first to approach her desk and take her hand. I immediately noticed the changes in her face. It wasn't as exhausting and tense as before. Yes, she was nervous, but there was a peace in her appearance that I had never seen. She looked different 10 pounds lighter, which was ideal for her height. Healthy, happy. Jerry did all this. Diana looked up first at Jerry and then at me. "I didn't mean to bother you." She held out her hand, on which was a silver ring without diamonds. "Kevin proposed to me this morning. I'm in seventh heaven. We were walking here, and I saw you. It's just fate. We have never been to this restaurant before. I never had a chance to thank Jerry for everything he did for me. I was a terrible person." She looked at Kevin and then at me. "I have done so many things. So many people have suffered because of me. Jerry gave me a chance to clear myself in front of everyone, including myself. I was able to apologize to the other two wives, but found out that you had moved out of the area." Her voice trembled slightly, and she took a sip of water. Her hand was visibly shaking. Then she turned to me and said, "And this despite what I did to him." Her gaze fell on me. "And to you. Forgive me for hurting you both. Please accept my apologies. Sandy, you have an amazing man. What he did for me, I will never forget." I was shocked, but I leaned over and hugged her tightly. It seemed to me that she sobbed a little. Jerry spoke first. "It's funny that you're celebrating your engagement today. Us too." We returned to Ohio to tell her brother and his family. Kevin looked at his bride with a smile. She worked so hard on herself. It wasn't easy, but I had never seen her like this before. This is the real Diana, the one that was inside, not scared, not broken. Jerry leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. "Life is better when we have a second chance. I got mine too. This is a great reason to celebrate." He extended his hand to Kevin and shook it firmly. "Congratulations to both of you. Enjoy your dinner and your new life." We walked away watching them hug and kiss. When we returned to our table, Jerry said he needed to go to the restroom and tried to leave unnoticed. "This sly guy thinks I don't know what he's going to do." I told him loudly, "No, we will do this together. You can go to the restroom after we pay for their dinner. I hope it will be long." Jerry smiled at me and hugged me. "And leave a good tip too. Let's do the right thing for them. Let's find their waiter." Neither Kevin nor Diana were dressed to the restaurant standards. That is why they were planted in the far corner. This dinner will be their engagement gift. It will cost about $100, not including our wine and tip. If we didn't have money, the situation would be different. But Jerry and I have the same values. If he hadn't offered, I would have insisted on it. This is a strong marriage. There is no point in holding a grudge. Sometimes success in life is about giving people a second chance. We returned to our table and sat down. Terry asked, "Who was it? You've been gone for a full 10 minutes." The children started eating, otherwise we would have been kicked out of here already. I looked at my nephews, who were eating pasta with red sauce, the way their father likes to cook. It's good that they eat. I wouldn't like to be kicked out today. "So who was it?" Jerry replied, "It was Diana. Today she got engaged. They also came here to celebrate their engagement." At this, Jerry gave me a gentle push in the side, and I extended my hand, showing Terry the ring. She's not the only one celebrating her engagement. We immediately found ourselves in the center of attention of the entire room. Terry couldn't contain her emotions. "He did this. Oh God. Finally, you guys finally did it. You are getting married." Then she realized what a fuss she had made and sat down embarrassedly, holding my hand with the ring tightly. Second chances take a lot of effort, as is luck. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.